we jammed this session with lots of detail that we think people will find helpful as they figure out all the ins and outs of maintenance for their unit. I'm going to welcome the other folks that we have who are going to do this presentation with me tonight. We have Dane Denson, who's our senior field manager. If you're part of our portfolio, you've probably been able to meet and enjoy time with Dane. He's an expert in the field and always someone that we can count on to deliver maintenance pretty flawlessly. Mike Finkelstein is with us as well. He's the director of project management. So some of our larger scale projects, he's going to be the one assigned to making sure that those go smoothly. When we get to the emergency section of the slide, he handles a lot of those in real time, along with Dane. Stephanie Coe is our senior vice president from the Nest side. She runs a lot of the traffic around all of how our maintenance is handled internally and has now a master's degree in Nest and how we handle day-to-day cadence of maintenance, and then all of the preventive work as well. And then Jason Lewis is with us, and he's the director of client experiences on the roof side, and he's going to help us talk about the difference between your responsibilities when you're a owner of a condo and what you can expect your role to be versus what you might expect the association role to be. So I want to thank all of them for taking the time to be present with all of you. Feel free to check questions into the chat. We'll probably get to them at the end, but we'd like to see what you're curious about, and we'll be repurposing this content in different ways. So don't hesitate or be shy about your questions. We love talking about this stuff, which is good because it's what we do all day long. So today we're going to talk about basically familiarizing yourself with and getting to know your space. And we'll kind of talk about it as a dating to marriage. So when you're looking for a property, we hope that folks are looking at it with an eye toward what it's going to take to keep that home in good repair and understand what your roles and responsibilities are going to be with regard to keeping it in tip-top shape. They're all the systems that you would expect for a home, which include plumbing, electrical, roofing, mechanical, the envelope, and then landscaping. We're not going to touch too much on landscaping, but the other elements, both Dane and Mike and Jason are going to walk you through those different components and some of the things that you'll want to familiarize yourselves with in terms of the vocabulary and different terminology that will pop up that will help you outline kind of what you need to think through to make sure that your house is in good repair all year long. And there are a lot of seasonal elements to home maintenance, and we'll touch on that as well. We are going to talk again about the difference between maintaining a home and then a condo. There are some different requirements and issues there. We'll talk about how to handle disasters and emergencies when they come up, and then how to kind of prepare yourself for those ahead of time so that they're not as disruptive as they could be. And so that means planning for the inevitable. And part of the inevitable is understanding that there's always some financial cost to managing your space and keeping it in good repair, and knowing ahead of time that those are costs you're going to have to incur helps sort of ease the burden of that. And then how you protect your investment. Who do you need on your side as a homeowner to make sure that when you need help and those resources, they're available to you. And then we'll move into some additional resources and some Q&A at the end. So that's basically how we've laid this out for folks. I do like the ownership commitment metaphor with dating versus marriage. When you're looking at spaces, and my guess is that wherever you are now won't be the last place you'll be in. As you look at new places going forward in your lives, think about what kind of responsibilities you're taking on with regard to maintenance, whether that is landscaping responsibilities, a large format roof. If you're buying an older home, you want to think through things that will fail over time, like masonry, which will fail after about 100 years. And most of the housing stock in Washington, D.C. is made with masonry construction. And those walls that you see throughout the city are starting, the masonry has started, the mortar is starting to fail, and that work needs to be done as well. So you want to think through each element of a home and those different systems, like the plumbing system, the electrical system, the mechanical system, the exterior, which we often refer to as the envelope, and then other safety elements that you want to be aware of so that you're clear on your responsibility and the seasonal maintenance and the preventive maintenance you're going to want to take on to be sure that you aren't positioned to deal with a lot of different emergencies or unexpected costs. And we'll walk you through what to be aware of and what to look at when you're looking at a house that you are thinking of buying, or a condo, or if maybe you're having a recommitment ceremony with the space that you're in now. And you're like, okay, it's time for me to be a little bit more thoughtful about how I'm handling things around my home. And, these issues apply not only to you folks, but to us as well. I mean, I'll look around my own house and think, geez, it's probably time to have the hot water heater replaced. It's been 12 years. And I know best practices to keep a list of things and how long they should really last over time in order to be a good and effective homeowner. So with that, I think one thing that I'll highlight for everyone is that the biggest threat to a property, besides a bad homeowner, is water. And water is one of those elements that can really threaten a space. And a lot of times we don't notice when water's coming into the home. And we might assume that water is going to come from the sky or from a plumbing leak, but water can also encroach on a property through the walls, through the masonry, through the windows. And it can be hard to pin down or understand where that water might be coming from. Water can also come up through the water table. If we've had heavy rains, we've seen water seep in through basement concrete, and that can be worrisome as well. So Dane on our team is the most fluent when it comes to understanding all the different plumbing issues that will emerge for you folks and what you want to really familiarize yourselves with. And he'll also talk about electric as well. So Dane, take it away.
All right. Thank you, Lisa. Welcome, everyone. I am Dane Denson with NestDC. Pretty much, if you haven't seen me, go to our website, check us out. You'll see me a lot there. Just to give you some quick fundamentals to familiarize yourself with your home or your condo unit will be as follows. We have the supply line, and we also have, along with supply lines, or water lines as well. These keep the water coming to your fixtures throughout the home, like refrigerators, toilets, washing machines, water heaters, etc. We have the water heater. Traditionally, it looks like a tank. With the new technology we have now, we have tankless water heaters. And these devices normally last anywhere from 8 to 12 years. And proper maintenance will get you closer to the 12-year side. But if you use it just like everyday shoes, you'll be more on the 8-year side. We have what you call a hose bib. This is more for people who live in homes. It does apply to some people who live in condo units on the lower levels. These are obviously fixtures on the exterior of your building that allow for like gardening, watering, simple car washes, whatever you want to use. But it's a good idea to have these shut off, particularly during this time of the year when it's very cold out. We have the shut-off valve, which is something that everyone should have, give or take your building type or the development of the building. This is basically a valve that cuts all the water off to your unit. And it's something that you should definitely want to have and definitely want to know the location of in the event of a leak or a water break. This would definitely help slow down, if not stop, depending on the age of it. Let's go on to the mixing valve. The mixing valve does pretty much what it says. It mixes the hot and cold waters together to keep you from scalding yourself. This was implemented many, many years ago, and it's definitely a requirement nowadays. So if you do not have a single handle shower fixture, definitely look in the future and plan things out to get that replaced with a single hand valve. We have the toilet flapper. Toilet flapper is pretty simple. I'm sure everyone has taken the back of the toilet tank top off and looked down and seen several parts. The flapper is normally the rubber piece you would see raised up and down once pushing the toilet lever to allow water to empty into the toilet the toilet itself, the toilet bowl, and obviously it would allow things to flush down as so. We have the fill valve. This is a valve which allows water into the toilet tank And that basically cuts on and off after each flush. Next, we have the toilet wax ring or seal, whichever word you like to use. This is pretty much a device that will help seat the toilet between the floor, the toilet flange, and the physical toilet itself. This product normally goes bad anywhere between 5 to 10 years, and that's based on installation, temperature within the building's wall cavities, but they do dry out over time. So you definitely want to at least check those parts out on the toilet just to make sure things are working well. We have what we would call the pressure reducer. It's also known as the aerator. This is where your faucet, normally in the bathroom, this is also on the kitchen faucet as well. And it's basically there to decrease the pressure coming in from the city side. And it also allows it to capture like small debris and pipe junk whenever there's water shutoffs in your area, even your building. It just basically holds particles from out of your tap water. We have the backflow preventer. This is normally found in homes, also condo buildings. This feature basically operates as a safety feature. Whenever you have a major storm and the sewer system just can't handle the volume of water, this device closes on its own with gravity, and it stops any incoming water from the city side, but it also stops water coming from out of your building or home as well. So if you understand and know that your building has this type of device and you know that you're in the middle of a rainstorm, try to decrease the amount of water that you're using and reach out to a neighbor and just check to see have they got an update on whether the backflow preventer is in operation. All right, we can switch slides on over to electrical. And before I jump into electrical, I almost forgot my most favorite, and Lisa talked about water tables earlier. We have sub pumps. These are located also in the basements of houses and condo associations. This allows water to be pumped out in the event the water table raises, or if there's just so happen to be a flood in your basement, it will also help pump water out of the building. All right, we can stay on to electric. Slide. All right, and to electrical. Another thing and things that you definitely keep an eye out in your home and be familiar with is your electrical panel. Typically, houses and condos normally have a 100-watt, 100-amp breaker and box, all the way up to a 200-amp breaker and panel. This is something that you should definitely keep an eye on, especially if your house is up in age. A lot of times, the areas that you live in get upgraded by the city, infrastructural wise. And if you have a low amp breaker panel, like a 100 amp breaker, you should definitely considering upgrading to a 200 amp panel and breaker. We have the GFCI outlets. These are simple safety devices in the event you are operating anything that's electrical around water. In the event you happen to drop a hair dryer or a handheld mixer, it'll pretty much cut the power off to that fixture and stop power altogether. If you live in a property that is very old, it is not required due to the age of your building. You're historically built in, but in the event you decide to make upgrades, you should definitely want to consult an electrician and check your local building code to ensure that you're installing the proper fixtures once you conduct your remodel. One of my favorites, we have the garbage disposal. It is not what they call it. It is simply there to help break up minor foods that happen to fall down into the drain, but your best solution is to compost when needed. If you ever, hear a humming or a buzzing noise, there's likely a power fault or there's something jamming your disposal. There are two places at the bottom of your disposal that you can use to reset your disposal. The first thing you have is the red button. Sometimes it's gray, sometimes it's burgundy. And that is the reset button that allows the power to be reset to that disposal in the event the power fails. Also, if it is jammed, they have a hex wrench that normally comes with the disposal. And what you would like to do is just simply insert that hex wrench down into the bottom opening of the disposal and just move back and forth, and it will likely unjam your disposal. And most important, your appliances. Appliances, just like many other things throughout the home, they don't last forever. So simple and basic maintenance is always key. And the best thing you can do for your refrigerator and any other appliances that are trapped within wall spaces or built-in areas, you want to simply just pull those appliances out and just vacuum it back. You'd be surprised, you might find some cereal from the kids or anything like that. So it's good just to clean back there altogether. And after all that said, I would like to kick it over to my guy, Jason, who will help get you through your building functions.
Thanks, Dane. I really appreciate kicking over to me. So let me start off by kind of conceptualizing where we're at in terms of the process. What Dane has walked you through is essentially walls in. And for the purposes of the portion that I'm going to lead in the discussion, we're really talking about a condo building. So what Dane is referring to is you as an individual homeowner, walls in items that are going to fall under your care. Now, we'll dive a little bit more into detail about this when we talk about unit owners association versus individual homeowners responsibilities. But what I want to talk about as we move outside of the individual unit to the building proper and some of the preventative maintenance programs and other facility components that need to be addressed. So as we have here on the mechanical system, we're going to divide it up into your HVAC, air filters, elevators, generators, and trash chutes. Now, let's start with HVAC, because as we're starting to transition outside of the individual residential unit and into the common area, this is where we can start to get some confusion about who's owning what. So whether you live in a condo building, single family home, row house, or a individual townhouse, you or your unit is going to have its own HVAC system. That's going to be your in-unit air handler and an exterior compressor system. Typically on condos, it's going to be located on the roof, and some of the older historic townhomes and row houses that we have here in Washington, you may see those also on the roof as well, or somewhere in the backyard. Now, there may be a common area system, a larger commercial grade system that is servicing the hallways which you're traversing through, or the lobby that you're entering as you come in, as well as any exhaust systems as well. For yourself as an individual homeowner, check your HVAC in advance of the season. As we're getting to October, as you're buying that candy for the trick-or-treaters, make a call to one of your local HVAC contractors. Have them come out and check the system, make sure it's functioning well in terms of the switch over to heat. That way that you're going into the winter knowing that you have a solid system. On top of that, as you're moving into spring and start doing that spring cleaning, reach out to that same HVAC vendor that you have for the switch over from forced heat into your conditioning. With regards to the air filters, proper maintenance is the best way to extend the life. So having an air filter change on a quarterly basis is going to extend the life of that item. Speaking personally, there's nothing worse than my mom gave me a call a couple of years ago saying that she had to replace the entire HVAC HVAC system for her unit, thousands of dollars. Now, luckily, mom knows, because she's got a son in property management, that you need to change that kind of stuff regularly. But if you're not extending the life through proper servicing of those units, you're going to get hit with several thousands of dollars in unanticipated costs. Let's move on to where we have more definitive lines between what the unit owner is responsible for and what you're going to see from the building system. So as we talk about the elevators and generators, those very much tie in. So for anybody who lives in Washington, D.C. that's joining us tonight and the District of Columbia, you're going to have what's called a periodic inspection. That's going to be, think of it as an interim report card saying what's going on with the system, and it's a heads up check for repair work that needs to be done in advance of the annual inspection, which is called a Category 1. Licensing in the District of Columbia is every 2 years for your elevator system. So you need to have 2 clear Cat 1 inspections that need to be passed and presented to the inspector. Something that's going to tie into that elevator system, but supporting the entire property, is a generator. Now, generators can come in many different shapes and sizes. You can have a small generator that you use, let's say, for a hurricane situation, knocks out power. That could be gas powered or some other fuel to use it. You're going to rev that up for yourself to get through the storm. Now we're talking about a larger building or large commercial, large mixed use development or other condo building. You're going to have a much larger and more sophisticated system for your generator. And for something like that, if you're for your own personal house, you probably want to rev that up every now and then just to make sure it's working. When it comes to your condo building or your mixed use development, you're going to want to put that on either a semi-annual or a quarterly PM, which is just shorthand to say preventative maintenance. Identify a contractor, have them come out, conduct a regular inspection of the system, make sure you're aware of anything that's going on. Some contractors are also going to recommend some things that you may not have heard before, such as a diesel fuel analysis or load bank test or a coolant. It's an engine system. So just like you're taking your car into Jiffy Lube every 3,000 miles to check it, same thing's got to apply to your generator, because what you don't want is an unexpected outage and the generator not functioning because you didn't get into the preventative maintenance program, lubricating the system, making sure that it's operating at peak performance. Trash chute, pretty easy. Best thing to do is get that cleaned on an annual or semi-annual basis, as the summer months will come and certainly will remind you that you have a trash chute within your condo building. So you want to put that on a regular annual or semi-annual cleaning. If we can move on to the next slide. So when we're talking about these mechanical systems that we have, we're going to get even a little bit larger into what are really falling under the association's responsibility. And this really sets up a concept for us that we talk about, which is facilities maintenance, which for those of you in the audience is the process for keeping the common property in the appropriate condition. So what you have here are many of the different building systems that you're going to encounter. For masonry, roof, and flashing of the exterior, that's really going to be a visual inspection that's being done of the property. You're looking for water infiltration points that are going to occur. You as a board member, or you as a property owner, or you as a board member and your association manager are walking that exterior looking for infiltration points. We highly recommend on an annual basis bringing out a roof contractor to take a look at the roof, anticipate any issues or damages. Shingle roofs are pretty straightforward, but those flat MEP style roofs may have little nicks or other things that can be a water infiltration point. So you want to identify those, mark those, and make sure that you're patching. Gutters, doors, and windows. A lot of times that's a mix between general cleaning, making sure that the gutter system is flowing properly, getting water away from the building, and then doors and windows, putting that on an annual cleaning contract to make sure that everything's ready for the holidays or for the spring when you're having more people in the property. We're going to switch over to life safety, which is a little bit more of the details when we talk about facilities maintenance. So for your fire suppression system, most of us are operating under what's called NFPA 25. That is the nationally recognized standard for fire systems to operate. And that sets out an essential checklist for us for how we should ensure that the fire system is operating at performance. Additionally, you got to keep in mind, fire marshals going around the property, and with recent events in the news in the past couple of years, they're certainly being more aggressive, which they should, to ensure that there's life safety. So us as your property manager, or you as, let's say, an individual owner of a 4-unit or 5-unit building that's self-managed, want to make sure that you're contracting at the bare minimum. You need to at least perform the annuals. I would say NFPA standards and what we practice here at Roost is to get you on the full program, but at a bare minimum, make sure you're knocking those annuals out. That's your annual fire alarm. That's your annual sprinkler test to make sure that the system's operating. If you have a fire pump system that you need to operate, you need to make sure that's being inspected on an annual basis, as well as any winterization now that it's getting colder, in order to ensure that there's no breaks or cracks in the line. NFPA standards do also recommend quarterly inspections of the sprinkler system as well. We find that's good practice to stay on top of any pinhole leaks or other things that may go bump, leak, or break in the middle of the night, and making sure that you're exercising that. For larger properties that we have, I can't stress enough the importance of owner-based maintenance, which we as a community association management company or through other management companies that you have can work for you, where you're conducting visual inspections of the fire system, you're conducting visual inspections of extinguishers, make sure that as we're getting to the colder months, winterization, guys, if you have a dry sprinkler system in level 3 below ground, you want to make sure that you're draining those out. If anybody was property manager and living in the area during the winter vortexes that hit 6 or so years back to the area, I can tell you that it is paramount to do that. I remember I got a call regarding a sprinkler head that had busted, went to the property. When I went into to the basement area where the dry system was, it was unfortunately the fire system, the sprinkler head that we needed to access was in someone's storage unit. They lived overseas in Europe. So myself in my suit went and shut down the fire system because no one was going to come out for multiple days. And that could have been avoided if we had a proper maintenance plan where there was draining out the dry system to make sure that all that residual water that was being captured inside of that was being moved through the system. Thousands of dollars in expenses, an unnecessary phone call that occurred to an owner overseas who felt that their, God only knows what they thought was happened to their storage or other personal items that were in there. That could have been done through simple maintenance. So I can't stress enough that as you're starting to take a look at these, whether you are an individual owner trying to extend the life of the capital components that make up your home, or your homeowners association that is trying to extend the useful life of the capital components that make up your building, a proper preventive maintenance program that's in place, that's timely, that's fitting the right contractor and the right program to the right system is going to save you dollars and cents down the line. And my last pitch is always spend the money. There's a little saying that we've been having on our team, which is to action that money. What's in your reserve accounts or other things that you have funds available for are going to pay you dividends down the line. If you're putting in the proper maintenance, you're bringing in a quality contractor and ensuring that the building system is operating. And with that, I want to switch it over to my colleague. I believe we have Mike up next, if I'm not mistaken. Mike, take it away.
Thank you, Jason. So what we have here is a list of important elements for your home that will basically make you a fluent homeowner so that you are properly taking care of your house. I'm going to go through this list and then we'll get into more details of how often to be taking care of these things. So number one, we've touched on it so far, but the location of your electrical panel, very important to know where it is, how to access it quickly. If your power goes out, if you need to do any electrical work in your house, you're going to want to go down to here, check your panel, make sure all the switches are on. If you're doing work on your house, obviously you're going to want to turn the breakers off so you don't get hurt. So knowing the location of that is very important. Typically, you're going to find these in a basement of a home. On the lower level, can vary in condos, but knowing that's important. Moving on, knowing the type and style of light bulbs in your house. We recommend that you upgrade as much as possible to all LED lifetime bulbs, because this will reduce the amount of time you have to change your light bulbs. It will lower your utility cost. And I actually find LED bulbs produce a much nicer type of light just to make you a little more comfortable in your home. But the key here is you don't have to change them as much. You can buy them on Amazon. You can get them anywhere. They pretty much make every type of bulb these days in LED. We've talked about it a few times, but the size of your air filter and the cadence of replacement is really important to make sure that you're on a consistent schedule. One thing I personally like to do is I buy enough air filters for the whole year. I store them either in my, your HVAC closet or somewhere, put them away. You can label them. January and then March or however often, so you don't have to think about it. Dane talked about how important shutoff valves are. Knowing where they are and labeling them is key, because in an emergency, you're going to want to get to them quickly to be able to shut them off. Often you'll mark, your main shutoff with a red ribbon, so that's the one. Maybe a different color for your hose bibs, but knowing where they are is key, so you can get to them quickly. Same with your water supply line locations. A lot of times your water supply lines are going to have individual shutoffs as well, like under your sinks. Again, it's key to get to these quickly if you're having leaks or water emergencies. Knowing the age of your hot water heater as well as your boiler and your HVAC is important. And again, going into having them on a regular schedule. A lot of people don't think you need to service your water heater like you do your HVAC system, but you really should. It's going to increase the life of it. The last thing you want to do is be in the middle of a shower and it turns ice cold and then you're out of water. You're calling an emergency plumber. Regular maintenance of that's going to avoid those problems. Gutter cleaning, every house or building is going to vary on how often you have to do this, but it is important to make sure you're on a schedule to understand the trees that are around your property and how much it clogs up, because clogged gutters can lead to a lot of problems. Most importantly, water infiltration into your house. And it's easily avoidable and not very expensive to have done. Snaking storm drains, another good preventative maintenance thing to do. Again, you are going to want to learn the cadence of how often you have to do it. We have properties in our portfolio that we do this once a year, semi-annually, even quarterly. Just sort of depends on the location and how your drains work. One thing that a lot of people never think about, but vacuuming your refrigerator vents, pulling out your refrigerator. If you haven't never pulled out your refrigerator after this, you should go and do it, because I bet you have a layer of dust on the back of it that has filled up so much that you probably can't even see the vents. Imagine it's the equivalent of basically choking your refrigerator. It can't breathe. It's going to wear out the motor. And it's so easy to wipe this off, take a shop vac, even your vacuum cleaner, clean it off, and then check it regularly, because, it's an expense you can avoid having to replace. Cleaning your dryer vents, another similar thing. This is really important because this can be a fire safety issue. Again, the cadence of doing it can vary. I would recommend at least, once a year, again, depending on use, but it's quick, it's easy. You can have somebody do it, clean that dryer vent, keep your property safe. And then lastly is chimney cleaning. If your property has a chimney, it's recommended to at least have your chimney cleaned every other year, but again, depending on your use. So if we can go into the next slide, we can sort of get into more details of how often to do these things. But your first list is your monthly, very important things to do. So changing your air filters, especially now with COVID and everyone being home, we're thinking about air quality and safety. If you change your air filter every 3 months, it really wouldn't hurt to increase that to 2 months, even every month. One, you're really helping your HVAC system. You're going to extend its life, but it's also going to improve the air quality that you're breathing. And we're all very conscious of that now. These filters aren't very expensive, so it's not a bad idea to up it. Checking all your fixtures for signs of leakage. I walk around my house. I'm in it a lot these days. I'm always looking up. I'm looking at my ceiling. I'm looking at corners, cracks. I'm always looking for signs of water intrusion, because if you catch it quickly, you can really reduce your expense of what the repair is going to cost. Looking at your sprinkler heads for signs of staining, leaking. In condo buildings, a lot of times when we have unit-to-unit leaks, the water comes through these sprinkler heads. You might not see damage on your drywall, but if you look around them, you can start to see the staining. You can get ahead of these things really quickly. Also, the sprinkler head itself could be leaking. You want to catch that. Checking walls for signs of staining, leaking. Again, it's a good thing to regularly be checking on. You don't want to, let a stain go for a year. It's going to grow and grow. The big M word that we like to not say, but mold could appear. You just want to get ahead of these water problems. And then lastly, checking for signs of pests. It's really important to check your unfinished areas of your house. Look for droppings. chew marks, little holes under your sink. Getting ahead of this, again, can reduce your long-term expenses. Semi-annual maintenance, gutter cleaning, that's the one where it's really going to depend on your property. Like personally at my house, I have to have my gutters cleaned about 5 to 6 times a year. I have these 2 huge oak trees that hang over my house and then a pine tree in the back, and they just fill up my gutters really fast. And if I'm not on top of it, I get a heavy rain, you see water spilling over, and it can just lead to a lot of problems. So at least twice a year, sometimes you're going to need it more. Just want to sort of get a feel for that with your property. Pruning and clearing trees, and trees and bushes. You just want to make sure everything's in good shape. An unhealthy tree can pose a hazard. It could fall over, it could hit your house, a car. You just want to stay on top of that. Your hose bib, checking it, turning it on and off, making sure it's not dripping, leaking, that it's functioning right. And we've talked about it, but winterizing it is also really important. So as we start getting cold, you want to shut the valve off that feeds it. You leave it on a little drip, make sure that all the water is drained out of it. You don't want any burst pipes that are going to cost thousands of dollars of damage. And water filters in your fridge, or if you have one built into your sink, it's really important because when a filter goes bad, you drink out of it, it can become really unhealthy. So again, kind of like your air filters, put yourself on a schedule, order a bunch of them, just routine. Annual maintenance, inspect exterior of house, look for cracks, staining, pooling of water around the perimeter. If you get ahead of these things, again, like everything, you're going to reduce your expenses. If you let these cracks go and they grow, it could lead to really big foundation problems. Pooling around the house. After a big rain, make sure all the water is drained away. If you see a little pond in the corner, you want to get on top of that because eventually the water is going to find its way into your house. You want to have your sub pump and hot water heater inspected at least once a year. Make sure they're working. Again, the last thing you want is for those things to fail when you really need them. Your HVAC system, I recommend having it serviced twice a year. Typically, you want to get it serviced as we head into the winter. They'll service the heating aspect of it, whether it's a boiler, a furnace, a heat pump. They're going to make sure you're all set for the winter. And then towards the end of the winter, you're going to switch over to you're going to get your AC aspect of it checked out. Again, they're going to just make sure everything's working well. And this will help you get ahead of some major expenses. Like Jason said, replacing a whole system, which could cost as much as 10 grand, depending on the kind of system. Checking fire and smoke detectors, very important. Smoke detectors and fire detectors save lives. Make sure your batteries are fresh. If it's beeping, don't ignore it. Figure out what's wrong. Testing it, you just push the test button, it'll beep, it'll let you know that it's working well. Very, very important. We talked about the dryer vents and fireplace, at least once a year for the dryer vent. The fireplace, some people can get away with every other year. It really just depends on the use. If you use your fireplace regularly, it's smart to do it every year. It's not very expensive. They're going to clean it out. Replacing some of the repairs on fireplaces can get incredibly expensive, and they're easily avoidable with some basic maintenance. And then lastly, roof inspection. You want to make sure you stay on top of your roof. This is a very important element of your house. It's very expensive to replace it. And it is basically the shield that is protecting everything coming down onto your house. Every couple of years, have somebody check it out. They can even do it when they're cleaning your gutters, make sure your shingles are good. It will save you a lot of money and a lot of headaches. And with that, I'm going to kick it over to Steph, I believe, who's going to talk.
I think this one is back to Jason, actually.
Back to Jason.
Appreciate that, Mike. Thank you. So what Mike, Dane, and I have laid out is a preventative maintenance program, which is just, first of all, identifying the physical asset to maintain, and then analyzing what the actual maintenance need is and creating a preventative maintenance schedule, which a vendor or yourself are going out to perform a check or conducting the actual work. All this ties into facilities management. And this is a segue into the bigger conversation of whose responsibility is it, which a lot of that is comes up with condo building. So there's two concepts that I want to introduce tonight. We can go into the governing documents, but we want to consolidate for you guys. Residential unit responsibility and common element, sometimes referred to as shared facilities. And I'll start with the association's shared facilities. So when we think about a building, your governing documents are going to be very, very detailed. They're going to describe what is your responsibility, the dimensions of your unit and the building MEP systems, which is mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, the MEP systems that make that up. It's also going to lay out what's called the common elements, which if we think about all the shared facilities that we as individual occupants of a condo building will use, the roof that protects us, the overall building envelope, the elevator that's allowing us to go up and down the floors, building systems such as a HVAC that I mentioned that's cooling and conditioning the hallways. For yourself as an owner, again, we have that listed out here, plumbing, HVAC systems. The key thing to remember is, and what we hold everything up to is, does the building system or the system in question service more than one unit? So if you have an HVAC system, and we get this a lot, people say, well, my HVAC system isn't working. That's an owner responsibility. If your refrigerator inside your unit is not working, that is a unit owner responsibility. Now, where it starts to get complicated is when we have leaks. And one of our favorite tasks, and the reason why I stay employed in this business, is unit to unit leaks that we have and navigating those. So think of it this way. For most of your, let's say, supply and drainage system, you're operating what's on a vertical tier, which means water's coming in from the street, shooting up through the building, and then spidering out into different units. When we talk about plumbing systems, essentially for the horizontal, which is your toilet to a drain to a common vertical stack, that horizontal drainage line, that's you as the homeowner, because that is servicing one unit. Now, let's say there's a backup. You live on the third floor. You're getting, your water's not draining. Your neighbor below you in the tier is also having the same issue. Neighbor below you in unit 1 is also having the same issue. That's going to be something that's a common element, because that clog or that issue is impacting multiple units. So when we as property managers here at Roost or any other company that you may or may not work with engage with you on this, our first question is, are your neighbors experiencing an issue? That's the telltale sign because we can't see behind the walls, and we certainly don't want to do a more invasive exploration. But that's where we're going in and saying, are you experiencing more issue? Because that's a tell for us whether or not that clog of whatever's in the plumbing line is just right in your plumbing, or if it's impacting others. You as an individual homeowner are responsible for your unit. What you do, how you care for your unit impacts your neighbors and then has the potential to impact the building. The association, through either its board of directors, its management company, is going to develop a facilities management plan. Like I said, we'll identify these issues. We'll put them on the appropriate maintenance schedule. We'll follow up with the vendors to make sure that's being done. We'll have reports and other items that are ready. We got a call this week from someone needing to get the last service report for the water heater system because they have a sale on their property. They need to reach out to us to make sure that that's being properly serviced. So we'll have that documents ready as the association. But when you as an individual owner are experiencing issues, I like to talk about something called Homeowner First, which is you as an individual unit owner have a responsibility to make sure that your plumbing infrastructure, your electrical infrastructure, all the MEP systems that are servicing your unit are not contributing to the problem. That does mean that you'll have to expend money on your own sometimes to clear it out, but it also might indicate where the problem is actually coming from. So as community management professionals, it's our job to help you go through the governing documents, give you a clear indication of what's in and what's out in terms of your responsibility, and also advise where the association is going to take over. And here at Roost, we try to go a little bit further in terms of being client forward, helping owners with vendor recommendations as we're experts. This is what we do all day. We're engaging with different contractors throughout the city and the district of, the overall DMV. So we're trying to share that knowledge with you as well for that value add. And with that being said, let me go ahead and turn it over to Steph, who's going to talk a little bit about when disaster strikes.
Disaster is never going to strike because you're going to do all of the things that were outlined here, and then you'll have nothing to worry about. I do want to thank everyone on this call because you guys have taught me so much over time that I've lived in my house. I have an active water feature in my basement that both Dane and Mike have consulted on over time as well. But in the case of when a disaster does strike, It is maintaining your calm during the storm, obviously. We had talked about the water shutoff, knowing where that is and being able to stop what is causing the emergency is first and foremost. So if you can get the water to stop causing that damage, that is key number one. Look and know where the shutoff is to the sink, to the toilet, and at the end of the day, to the whole property. And that will certainly help ease your stress if you can stop the cause. Obviously, being able to turn knowing where your breaker is, turning the power off to that is key. And at the end of the day, I believe Mike said it too, if you do hear the smoke alarm beeping, do exit the building if it is going off, if there is an issue. Making sure that you are staying safe, that your pets, your family, everyone is safe at the end of the day. I think Jason said it one time, you can always go back into the building, but you need to make sure you get yourself out to be safe. And then Mike does spend a lot of his time dealing with insurance companies on different claims that are filed on the Nest side. I've met with owners over the years who don't know who their insurance company is. Make sure you know who you have insurance with so that when something happens, you're not scrambling to try to find who you're supposed to contact or what information they need. Slow down, know who you're going to deal with, take pictures of things, take videos, document the space, document the issue. You can't have too much documentation. I think Mike would agree with that when you're going up against an insurance company. So making sure you know who you're talking to, making sure you know what you're telling them, and that you have adequate insurance coverage is key. Having an emergency plan in place if the property is threatened is also important to just, again, plan ahead. You're going to do as much as you can to prevent any issue from happening. But in the event that it does, you want to make sure that you've thought things through as much as possible, even in terms of where you can go when something is happening, shutting everything down, exiting, and making a plan for where you can go. Another preventative key that we've talked about to a lot of owners over time, especially if you are not, if you do travel a lot, if you're going to be gone for an extended period of time, having water alarms, lighting timers, smart home features with alerts. I know a lot of people now are doing Ring doorbells and their security cameras and all of those things. It will put your mind at ease to know if you can get your eyes on a property or that you would be alerted if something was going on. So all of those things are key on the preventative side as well. And I would also say in terms of the plumbing, I think Lisa had mentioned this in a previous town hall that we had done, where if you do have to have a plumber out or a technician out, don't be afraid to ask them to check other toilets or the sink or any plumbing that's going on in the unit, just to be safe. If it's a plumber that you trust and they say, this toilet flapper is going bad, you might want to go ahead and replace it. Make sure that you can do those things ahead of time, again, to keep an emergency situation from happening or the wax ring from failing or anything that might pop up over time. So we can go over to the next slide as well. And this is preparing for the inevitable. Things were out and need repair. So planning ahead for expenses. We typically tell owners between $1,000 and $2,000 for a condo, depending on the life of appliances, depending on how much you want to put aside to save for that roof replacement. Anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000 a year would be good to bank on for a house. But again, that can change. And as we talked about, you're going to know how old your water heater is. You're going to know about the boiler. You're going to know all of those things. So you can plan in advance, understanding the life cycle of those utilities. Make improvements and design decisions for the long haul. This kind of goes hand in hand with the next one. Short-term savings can lead to long-term headaches. So making sure you're making decisions, don't ignore clearing the drain. Don't ignore replacing the toilet or whatever needs to get done that could potentially help save money in the long run. Make those decisions, especially if we've done a lot of series here with these in terms of turning your home into potentially an investment for the long term. So if you are planning on making your investment, turning your house or condo into a long-term investment, making those decisions now and keeping that property in good shape will pay off in the long run. And as I mentioned, at the end of the day, having a plan for emergencies, fire, burglary, intrusion, or flood, that is what we're talking about today in terms of the preventative side, making sure you're keeping up with those monthly, quarterly, annual checks will put your mind at ease over time. And with that, I will pitch it back to Lisa.
Thanks, everybody. There was a jam-packed presentation, and typically we do these in the office with folks that we invite to come and join us. We usually set aside 90 minutes to 2 hours for it. So we did pack a lot in there, but again, we'll make the presentation available. A lot of the highlights, you want to make sure that you are working on a preventive maintenance plan, that with each choice that you're making in terms of those repairs or preventive maintenance, you're looking at the cost benefit and deciding where you want to make those investments in your home. So if it's a choice of repainting a room or patching the roof, you want to patch the roof, because otherwise you're just going to spoil the paint job when it starts leaking. So thinking through, like if you have limited resources or you have a pool of money that you can draw from, you want to be really thoughtful about where you're going to invest those dollars in your home for the long haul. And then vendor selection. As you look through different vendors, a lot of folks think of best practices to get three bids for the exact same scope of work. If it's a job that's less than $1,000, you're better off just going with a vendor that you know is trusted and having them do the work on a time and materials basis. Folks don't realize that you're going to pay for the bid. So getting 3 bids means that you've asked 3 people to take away time from their schedules to come and evaluate that job. They're going to have to build the cost of their time into the estimate that they give you. So there's certain things where a patch job or maybe a deck repair or something like that can be achieved pretty easily in a time and materials scenario. And you can just offer an upper limit that vendor can give you. And a lot of times vendors will tell you, listen, you're better off replacing X, Y, or Z. It could be the furnace, it could be the hot water heater, or you may be in a better place to repair it. Those are questions that you want to be able to ask yourself in terms of, again, those resources, the dollars that you've set aside to maintain the home. And then remember, a brand new water heater doesn't mean it's brand new forever. You want to kind of start the clock again, keep track of when you're replacing things and their useful life, and make sure that you're not the person experiencing the emergency that can come from not understanding your property or making sure that it's in good repair. So we have a few minutes for questions. If anybody has them, we will also, again, make this available to folks after the fact. We do have some kind of tips for the end here, making sure that you have the right insurance coverages. It's never a bad idea to annually call your insurance broker and ask them if the coverages that you have are appropriate for your unit. For the cost of living now. If you've made improvements and you're in a condo, you want to be sure that your insurance coverages include what's called betterments. And, have a list of vendors that you can call on before it's urgent, because some vendors, unfortunately, will be able to sniff out somebody that's just going to pay whatever they need to get out of an emergency situation, and you might not get the repair that you need. So having a list of good vendors that have been vetted is really smart. The same with winterizing and having contracts for some of your systems for annual maintenance and seasonal service. It's just nice to have a team of folks that ensure that things are going well. And finally, if you're a homeowner and you kind of wish you had a landlord you could call to deal with these things, we do have a program called Birdwatch, where we offer a property management service and program for folks that own and live in their homes, but don't want the headache of all these things that we just spent an hour chatting with you about. So if you're interested in that, just let us know. We're happy to walk you through it. It's a very convenient and accessible program for folks. If you want to chat any questions happy to.
We did have one question, I believe, Mike or Dane, if you want to hop in on this. A question about the outside damper for the vent from the kitchen hood. Stays open even when I'm not running my vent fan and it's letting cold air come in through the vents over the stove. Is that normal?
Let me just make sure. Okay, so basically there's a kitchen or a bathroom vent that has like a louver style door.
It's the
okay. Gotcha. Yeah, so those go bad over time. Sometimes if you notice it's still open, there's a great chance, hence you might have a bird in there. So I hated to say that, but there might be a bird's nest in there. It could be made out of metal, which obviously rusts over time. So without lubrication, it will freeze itself open. But yeah, I would definitely check to make sure there's not like a bird's nest in there. And if it's any style of metal, just to see if it has any like rust built up around it, or just anything keeping it from shutting.
And what type of contractor would handle that?
A general contractor, it'd probably be best to have someone that does like a duct cleaning or like dryer vent cleaning if it's for a dryer. Obviously get someone that does dryer vent cleaning that can clean your line and replace that part as well. So that'd be your best choice.
Awesome. Another one, Mike, do you find that vendors who spend a lot on advertising are worth it or not? Are you paying for their commercials essentially?
You know, it's hard to say whether they're worth or not. You are paying for their commercials. They're going to have a lot more overhead if they are able to spend all this on advertising. You know, personally, we like to support small businesses, local companies. So, I mean, I wouldn't say avoid somebody just because they're advertising, but do expect to spend more. You know, an example would be for HVAC contracting, using a company like Michael & Sons. You know, they're going to be very expensive, and they're basically building their company on coming out there for nothing, but then selling you a lot. And they have a lot of overhead. They do spend a lot on advertising. So I would say, you know, if you can go with the smaller local vendors, you're gonna save money. You're gonna get really good quality work. But do look at reviews and word of mouth and what other people are saying.
Yeah, I agree. In fact, if you call Michael & Sons and some of the other larger vendors that do spend a lot on like bus advertising and number one in the phone book and all those things, the person that's coming to your house is actually a salesperson. They're not the technician. So the technician will follow. So just keep in mind that, you know, there is a commission-based component to their work, which is not a bad thing, but it does mean that you're going to end up sort of spending more over time. And I've had bad experiences, which isn't to say that Michael & Sons is one that would deliver that, but where I've been told, oh, you know, your HVAC system is on its last legs. You should get it replaced now. It's $4,000 to $5,000. I get an on-the-spot estimate. And then 7 years later, I have that same furnace. It's fine. So, you know, you don't have to assume that whatever they're telling you is not going to work anymore, that's the definitive answer.